You're listening to Odyssey, A Tale from the Road, an audiobook by Christopher Cologne. All rights reserved. Any resemblance to persons living or dead are purely coincidental.
Chapter 11. It was the most delicious meal I ever had. Mrs. Nimble kept bringing out tray after tray of food. It was hard to resist. Every time I thought I was full, she would retrieve some other thing from the kitchen that impossible to refuse. This was better than anything from the supermarket, because it was all stuff from their farm. The eggs, milk, bacon, bread, they made everything fresh. Mrs. Nimble still prepared enough food for 14 people even though it was just us 7 that sat for breakfast. She missed her children, and I was more than happy to be her adopted child for the day. If my mother made food this good, I would have never left home. Even frail Farmer Nimble ate like the rest of the young men that sat at his table. He put the food away. He must have had one hell of a fast metabolism. Through shoveling food in his mouth, Farmer Nimble was giving us a sermon. To Holly and Mrs. Nimble, this was regular meal conversation. My bandmates and I weren't used to this kind of preaching. He would ask us questions about our faith and we would answer him with our mouths full of food. None of the Nimbles were offended if food particles sprayed from our mouths as we answered Mr. Nimble's questions. Jimmy was most receptive to Mr. Nimble's tableside religious lecture. Jimmy was raised in a very Catholic household, so this was no surprise to him. Jim even impressed Mr. Nimble when he joined in the grace prayer before we started eating. Mr. Nimble dominated the conversation. Corey tried his best to dazzle Mr. Nimble with latent lies. Corey felt that if he could win over Mr. Nimble, maybe his daughter would follow suit. It was so transparent, that nobody even bothered to entertain any of Corey's statements. I was so embarrassed for Corey. He didn't know when to quit. I didn't want it to be associated with him at times. If he was boasting himself in front of some starry-eyed groupie, that was okay, because we would be gone in the morning. We were in their household. We were their guests. He was insulting their intelligence with his flagrant disregard of the truth. He kept trying to make eye contact with Holly, and when she did look at him, she adjusted her face to make sure that wasn't getting mixed signals. She wasn't buying his bullshit. Nobody was. But the Nimbles were too kind to call Corey out. He was nipping at the hand that feeds literally. Holly did keep making eye contact with me. I tried my best to stay with Mr. Nimble and his conversation, but I was often thrown off when I caught Holly just staring at me. I would look over at Corey and he would shoot back a look of utter contempt in my direction. It wasn't my fault she was showing interest in me. I certainly wasn't encouraging it. I tried to keep my attention on Mr. Nimble, but Holly's stare always seemed to be in my peripheral vision. When the meal was finally over, Farmer Neil said, "Now, that was a good meal. You know what would make it even better? A cigarette. Do any of you boys have a cigarette on you? I gave you guys breakfast. All I ask for, in return, is some fresh tobacco." "Nice try, Pop." Holly added, "Don't listen to him, guys. Dad's been smoking ever since he was 13 years old. Doctors say that after all those years of abuse to his lungs, he's lucky just to be alive. The good Lord isn't ready for me yet. I still have work to do for him down here. But I'll be waiting for him whenever he decides to call me to the promised land," her father said. I said to Farmer Neil, "Sorry sir, even if your family hadn't objected to it, none of us smoke, or should I say, none of us have cigarettes on us." The perpetual smile on Mrs. Nimble's face washed away. "And you boys should never smoke. Those damned cancer sticks nearly took my husband, and father of my children, away from us. Those cursed things are banned from this household." As strong as his faith is in the Almighty, my husband fought a long hard battle with his nicotine addiction. A real David and Goliath story. It was the only vice he had, and he overcame it, after years of torment. If you boys love the gift of life, you'll never do that kind of damage to your bodies. I didn't want to inform Mrs. Nimble that over the years, cigarettes were probably the least damaging chemical compound I've ever put in my body. I'm glad I never got too caught up in smoking. I hated the way it smelled up my clothes and hair. We had to deal with it when we played the clubs, and over the years, the stink box had carried its fair share of cigarette smokers that drifted in and out of the band, but thankfully, not for too long. I understand doing a drug that would give you a good buzz, but not cigarettes. They never appealed to me. They seemed like a waste of time and money. Besides, Dad, with that oxygen tank that you drag around, you know what would happen if you got near an open flame of a cigarette lighter? Boom. Bye bye. Yes, I get it. Spare me the lecture. I could tell Farmer Neil had this conversation with his daughter before. My faith keeps me alive. The devil tempts me with his infernal product, but I will always win. I have the big man in my corner and he will never let me down. Hallelujah. Holly and Mrs. Nimble started to clear the table. They knew that their father and husband was only human. They loved him for it. He was their pillar, even if that pillar did have a few cracks in it. When they were done, Holly came into the dining room with 4 fluffy folded up towels. You boys look like you haven't seen the business end of a bar of soap in a dog's age. One good thing about growing up in this big family is that we have 3 showers in this house. One in the basement, one on this level and one upstairs. You could never have too many bathrooms in your house. Mom is going to get you boys some of my brother's spare clothes for you to change into. I brought you some towels to wash up. Holly lightly chuckled. Don't be afraid of the soap. It's your friend. Lather up nice and good and rinse all that filth from your bodies. Holly had intentionally handed my bandmates their towels first so they could go shower first. All the showers in the house were about to be occupied. Which meant, while I waited for a shower to become available, Holly and I could spend some time in each other's company, uninterrupted. Farmer Neil excused himself and Mrs. Nimble went to the kitchen to wash the dishes. Corey caught on to Holly's plan. I could tell that he wanted to linger around to cock block. My own personal Judas. He felt the awkward silence that let him know his presence wasn't desired. Everybody went their separate ways. It was just me, Holly and the last towel. So, tell me, why are you guys here? Really? The truth. And remember, I may look like a poor, redneck, hillbilly, white trash, but don't let these looks deceive you. I'm a lot more hip than people give me credit for. So don't lie to me. You guys seem a decent bunch. People don't end up out here, with no money, friends, or transportation, without having made some big mistakes. I appreciated her bluntness. We're on the run. Plain and simple. Arnie Ellis, the whale, the governor's brother, is out to get us. We were at a strip club that his son runs. His son hit one of the strippers, so I hit him back. Things escalated and I ended up putting a cigarette out in his eye. I tried to lighten the mood with a joke. Your father was right. Those things could be deadly. She didn't laugh. I continued. Some of Arnie's thugs chased us down the road and we ended up flipping the car over on its back. We survived the crash and escaped the wreckage. We were heading down the road, before the thugs came back to make sure that we were dead in the morning. We were walking, for only God knows how many miles, when we saw your dad and flagged him down. He was the first person we saw in hours. He picked us up and brought us here. That's quite some story. I got to give you credit for that. It's too complex to sound like a lie. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. You're the hero in this tragic tale. I'll buy that. Here's the deal. You guys aren't the first people to take advantage of my father's hospitality. Like I said, I'm going to take everything you said at face value. You're a bunch of good guys who have been given the shaft, and for that I'll pray for you, honestly. But you can't stay here. We've had plenty of people overstay their welcome in this household. My father never threw them out and they took him for a sucker. Now, I like you. I think you're cute. You're definitely the best looking man that has ever been a guest in our house. But I'm telling you this right now, you have to go. I couldn't believe she was treating us like this. What kind of pricks did her family had to deal with, for her to be this jaded? I really felt a connection with her father, but she thought we were some shiftless drifters. She wanted us out and I had to respect her wishes. She continued, you guys could stay a day or two, but then you have to go. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Some people are given the shortest straw, because that's exactly what they deserve. I'm not talking about you specifically, but your buddy, Corey, is really starting to get on my nerves, and if you two are a package deal, I will just have to discard you both. Trust me. I understand. Corey and I have been friends for years, and I often question why. Well, you need to ditch that albatross, before he drags you down with him. I like Jimmy and even Dimitri seems cool in his own weird way. But Corey has no future, not unless he's standing on somebody else's shoulders. I know you don't want that to be you. Speak of the devil. Corey came back into the dining room. I don't think he heard our conversation, or he would have been really pissed off. He was wearing Holly's brother's spare clothes. The clothes was sticking to his body because he wasn't dry. Even his hair was still wet. He took a quick shower and didn't even bother drying himself in hopes of getting back in time to interfere with my interaction with Holly. If he only knew that I had no intention of hooking up with Holly, even before she gave me the speech about our band not being able to stay in her family's house. Holly looked over and saw Corey approaching. Then she looked at me directly in the eyes. She grabbed me by my shoulders and pulled me towards her. Before I realized what was going on, she had her tongue down my throat. What was I supposed to do? I reciprocated. I wasn't going to let this opportunity slip away. In the back of my mind I feared that Farmer Neil or Mrs. Nimble would see us and they would have a meltdown. Holly wanted us gone. So even if they caught us kissing, I was destined to hit the road anyway, so I dropped all my apprehensions and enjoyed the kiss. I opened my eyes and noticed that Corey was gone. Hopefully it was to finish up the job of completely drying himself. Holly pulled away. "You're a good kisser," she said as a matter of fact. "I'm not complaining, but what was that all about?" I asked. "Well, now that your buddy has seen us kissing, maybe he will give up trying and leave me alone." "Oh boy. You really don't know Corey. He's not going to let this go. I'm stuck with him, and believe me, he's going to make me pay for kissing you." "Really? I just wanted him to stop trying to get with me. Even he should have known that he never had a chance." "Is he really that sensitive?" "Yes. His ego has its own zip code." I was making an understatement. "Well, tell him that he better go back to the shower and go beat his meat, because he doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell with me." "I thought you were so innocent." "I guess I was wrong. I put on that act for the sake of my parents. They're good people, just too trusting. I've got to take care of them for as long as I can. I want my own life off this farm. My brothers and sisters are lucky. They got away. But they weren't prepared for the real world. They thought that everybody lived as wholesome as our family was. They were all in for a big surprise when they had to walk amongst the wolves in sheep's clothing. I've learned from their mistakes that the one good thing about being the youngest, all I got to do, is not repeat their naive misconceptions of the world. I can't wait for my time to come. But that time won't be until Mom and Dad can take care of themselves. Your parents built this farm and raised 12 decent kids. I don't think you're giving them enough credit. Maybe I'm not."
Please visit twostrangersonePodcast.net.